Okay, let's get started. So, if you'd be willing to use the hand raising feature on Zoom, if you're willing to introduce yourself and just tell us something that's really important in your congregation as you're thinking about raising, um, that will help us continue to get to know each other. Madeline from Klabu Yachad.
I'm Madeline Sigmund Grant. I'm the president of Havarabi Yachad in Salt Lake City, Utah. We're the only constructing Judaism congregation in the state. We had a very successful initial fundraising um, process. We exceeded what our goals were. Now we want to know how to, we're interested in sustaining the interest in supporting the congregation.
That's great. Thank you. And thank you for making it like information packed and yet concise. Who else? Aha, Robin from Columbia Jewish Congregation.
It's not really fundraising, I guess, but we every year at the end of year, we usually do just like one or two asks for um, end of year giving, keep us in mind. This year, we put a little more thought into it, and we did four messages that kind of played along each other for each week in December. And we actually had more people contribute and raised just shy of $15,000.
That sounds like a good number in your context.
We were very we were very pleased.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Yes, good news is welcome. I see Amber has got her hand up.
We've got kind of a growing administrative staff, and so we are very interested in making sure that wages are sustainable and that we can continue to operate at the same level going forward. And obviously, without staff, we can't continue to grow in most capacities. And we're also in a rabbi search at the moment, so obviously we need to make sure that we can offer a competitive package and be an attractive synagogue. So really that's kind of at the forefront of our minds right now, is being sustainable for our staff and the people that are in charge of running the
Why are there
place.
so many ravens going on, bro?
I'm distressed about the Ravens too, by the way. But thank you, Amber. Will you come back on and just remind everyone what congregation?
Sure, Temple Beth Shalom in Salem, Oregon.
Temple Beth Shalom in Salem, Oregon. Okay. Um, I have questions abundant, particularly about the Oregon Ducks, but I'm letting it go. I'm letting it go. I know I said three, but let's do four. Rebecca.
I was just gonna follow up because I'm the same congregation as Amber,
Okay.
but in addition, we're trying to like expand our Benenu youth education, and so it goes in line with the rabbi search and expanding our administrative staff. But we're also trying to figure out a more sustainable like youth education model for a growth model.
I appreciate you sharing that example, and I actually want to take a moment to acknowledge like some of the things that we just heard. We heard, about getting results simply by upping the effort a bit on an end of year email campaign. We're hearing about, I'm moved actually to hear that part of a fundraising conversation is also a general financial planning conversation that includes the question, how can we pay a respectful and living wage to people as we continue to grow staff? Uh, that is one of the most important questions that we can be asking, and it's also really tough for a lot of our congregations. to live up to their own values and their own self-imposed expectations around that, because sometimes the money's just not there. Um, but if you keep making that a component of your ongoing conversations about finances, including setting fundraising goals, then that means that you're still working the problem, so to speak. And I think that that tends to be how we sometimes succeed in actually making serious progress. I'm taking a moment to do a little uh, housekeeping thing. Sherry Brenner, I'm about to make you co-host, and I want to thank you for having stepped up and offered to do that. And let's see, do we have folks who are still waiting to join us? I guess I'll leave that to Sherry. She can tell us. So, as hopefully you all got the email from me in which I included a link to a 30-minute YouTube of me finishing the presentation that we were just starting before the new year, which was about multi-purpose fundraising. I'm going to just recommend that you go check that out if you want to get the rest of that. I also included in the last email a link to the current draft of the corresponding chapter in the fundraising guide. And so truly, you've really got everything you need if doing more multi-purpose fundraising activities is something you're excited about. And as always, you're always welcome to reach out to me and our team in Thriving Communities to talk about a specific situation in your congregation. Our One of the beautiful things about our movement being relatively small is that we are able to talk with you about what's actually going on in your congregation. So, tonight, what I'm hoping is that we will be able to um, have two uh, presentations. They're both similar to each other in size, and they also kind of have some similarities in terms of the mechanics of what they cover. One is on legacy gifts, very specifically the kinds of commitments that people make to leave money to your congregation when they pass away. And then the other is giving from retirement accounts. Some of you there was like a sneak preview, one off promo session. So some of you may have seen me do the slideshow on giving from retirement accounts. Um, but I want to go ahead and try to tackle those two together this evening. I think since some of you may have seen the other one, it probably makes sense to start with legacy gifts. And so what I'm going to do is share my screen and bring that slideshow up. And what I'm aiming to do here is kind of present to you frontally for probably a good 25 minutes, and then pause for questions and then wrap that up. And then we can kind of pivot and hopefully we'll have a decent chunk of time for the one on giving from retirement accounts. The, the, the other thing I want to say about this by way of introduction is to talk about sort of where it fits in the scheme of this 6-session course. So, we started the course with doing some activities that involve you kind of taking inventory of different aspects of your congregation, kind of doing some self-assessment, and then putting some thought into who is going to do the work of fundraising in your congregation and how to take whatever system you currently have in place, however informal, and make it a little bit more organized. And then we talked a big chunk about storytelling. And I like to think of those as kind of deeper foundations. Um, as we pivoted last time into multi-purpose fundraising events, we sort of pivoted into tachlis, right? The word for nuts and bolts, more practical aspects of fundraising. And that's what we're going to do again tonight. And we're doing it with a Reconstructionist frame. And the frame is not so much ideological as it is based on my familiarity with how a lot of our congregations function. That whether you are larger or smaller in terms of the number of members you have, if you're part of this movement, chances are you are trying to make the most that you can out of limited resources, and that in some ways you've gotten very good at that. And that's the lens through which I evaluated the kinds of things I learned researching these projects. I was looking for what can most of our congregations actually find the bandwidth to do, or even partially do. So without any further delay, let me jump into this particular presentation with you. Okay, so we want. Alrighty. So we're starting with legacy gifts. Um, like I said, legacy giving, it's one of the most powerful ways that your congregation's members can ensure that their value and their commitment live on in the synagogue's life far into the future. So, the simplest definition of this is legacy giving is about members including your synagogue in their estate plans, whether that is a simple bequest in a will or whether it is they're naming the synagogue as one of the beneficiaries of a retirement account that they might have, or a life insurance policy, right? And legacy gifts can also include more complex gifts, but we're going to actually keep our focus on just four kinds of gifts. So, and just to kind of get into terminology a little bit, um, legacy giving is a subset of the broader topic known as planned giving, right? So, legacy giving really does kind of just boil down to wills and trusts and who you might name as a beneficiary for those other two kinds of instruments that I mentioned, a retirement account or a life insurance policy. More complicated things like charitable remainder trusts and complex estates that have got a lot of moving parts. That's kind of outside the scope of what I'm calling legacy giving. So, why does this matter? Why does it matter to have a legacy giving program? I kind of love this collage that I admit I sort of slapdashed together using a bunch of stock images that were mostly available on Canva, not solely there. And you should never do that. You should only use real consented images of actual people in the actual places where you are. But even just playing around, with some public domain images, I was able to put together a kind of story visual story, right? And in this visual story, the oldest rabbi in black and white is the man on the far left, and then you can see the next generation is their next rabbi, in the 70s and 80s, and then moving beyond like the marches for freeing Soviet Jews and into the 90s and O's and the 21st century, we have the congregation's current rabbi, and she's wearing tefillin and chanting from the Torah. And in all three of the eras that this storyboard represents, on the top, you're seeing images that sort of represent families as they're sort of typically pictured. And on the bottom, you're seeing this through line of tikkun olam work, of social justice work, right? And this is why this matters. It matters because legacy giving campaigns give you a chance to tell a story about why your congregation matters, why it has mattered before, and why it continues to matter, and how you are committed to extending those core values, those core commitments, those things that make your synagogue a blessing into the future. This is a great um, type of campaign that allows you to tell that story. It's not the only campaign, type of campaign where you'll tell this story, but this really focuses people on figuring out what this story looks like for them. And it doesn't have to extend back 80 years. You can do this no matter how long your congregation has been around. Okay, now we're going to do nuts and bolts here. There's some low-hanging fruit in the world of legacy gifts. And I mean, really easy peasy, could take some people less than 10 minutes to do this kind of low-hanging fruit. So basically, one of the things in a legacy giving campaign that I implore you all to be doing is to be asking your members, if they have a life insurance policy, to please consider updating their beneficiaries to that policy. Most people's life insurance policies make them list by percentage who the beneficiaries are and what percentage of the life insurance policy they should receive upon their death. Chas v'chalila. That I'm just going to add, God forbid, and it goes repeatedly without saying throughout the rest of this presentation, so I'm not going to have to repeat it. Um, so, in some cases, people are adept at logging into their platform where they have their insurance, and they can actually go in there and do it themselves. In other cases, they're going to need to make a phone call. In some states, if you're married, your spouse may be legally required to sign off on any kind of changes that might diminish the amount that's being left to them. Rules and regs vary, but this one is really easy to do, and it's something that younger families, younger adults, I should say, who like adults with kiddos in religious school, like they can do this too. And you know, if you feel funny about asking people to do this, we're going to get to this later, but you can ask them to just name the synagogue as a 1% beneficiary. And they can leave 99% of it to the people that they most care about, but still make an impact on the future of the congregation. You can tell I'm so motivated. I want to like sell people on doing this everywhere. So the same thing applies to retirement accounts. If you're in Canada, then they're probably known as RRIFs. If you're in the United States, then there are different kinds of IRAs or 401ks, and there's a couple of other versions as well. With these accounts, it's the same thing. When you first start them, generally speaking, you're asked to list your beneficiaries. And like I said before about insurance, same thing. Certain states have certain rules if you're married, that either one spouse automatically has to leave everything to their spouse, or they need to get the spouse to sign off to allow any kinds of changes. Usually not set up that way, but sometimes. Bottom line, um, asking people, um, would you consider logging in if you are able to do that, and finding out how you can tab over to your beneficiaries, and including the synagogue for 5% or 1%. Um, and this is something that may come to pass decades in the future, but you are already making an action that is going to help sustain the congregation in the future. So now I'm going to get to this this type of ask that would come up over and over again as I watched countless YouTube videos and read countless articles about churches and synagogues seeking these kind of donations. And this is this thing known as the 1% legacy ask. Um, my only hesitation about it is if you feel like you are in a place where you could ask people to consider more, I wouldn't want you to like short yourself by starting out this way. But if you're not sure how people in your congregation are going to feel about this, and you kind of aren't, you kind of want to start conservative and just sort of road test this, then I'm not going to read everything that's in the voice bubble here. Some of you have probably already read it. Then the idea is that you find different um, opportune times for people who are talking with congregants. Maybe it's somebody who's talking with them about making a gift from their retirement account. But to just say, I think this is an account where you have to have beneficiaries listed. Would you be willing to consider a 1% gift to the synagogue to change, to modify and update your beneficiaries so that it's set up like that. So there's been some studies done on this, and apparently there's good data that says that this is a very popular ask, and people respond. Like apparently, like a majority of people in congregations will say yes to this question. The other thing is when they go ahead and call the person they need to call or log in and do whatever it is they need to do, more than half of the time they leave more than 1%. Apparently, the average is like 3.5%. So again, this is low-hanging fruit. Setting a goal to get every household, except for like a handful of stubborn outliers, um, to make some kind of 1% commitment um, from an insurance policy or a retirement account, like setting a goal to accomplish that over like 5 years is like really achievable and really worth doing. Okay, I'm going to pivot now to some of the other elements that you need in order to set up a legacy giving campaign. Okay, so you need ambassadors. What are ambassadors? Ambassadors are one or two people, preferably two, who are members of your congregation and are going to volunteer to be legacy giving ambassadors. What they're going to do is they're going to get some training. That training may come from staff. That training could come from our department, because this is not like rocket science training. Um, but they just need to get trained up to be able to do a few different things. They need to learn about the different types of um, bequests that people can make. And we've only covered two of them so far. We're going to cover the other two because I said we were going to do four. But they need to learn about how those work. They need to be willing to be the people who are drafting solicitation emails that are going to go out once a quarter, however often it is that um, whoever's making decisions about your overall fundraising strategy, agrees is a good uh, rotation to have these asks roll out in, and they're going to be helping write some of the other communications like periodic Shabbat announcements. And they're going to be available to talk to people, and their faces are going to be on the dedicated website landing page that you have for legacy giving. So those are some of the things that ambassadors are going to do. These are stock photos, but I looked for one quality in all of these faces, and that was kindness. So the most important thing about people that you recruit to serve in this role as legacy giving ambassadors is that they have really good people skills, really excellent social skills, that they are non-defensive, that they can hear somebody tell them perhaps about a few things about their financial life in the course of trying to assist them to think through how they might leave a legacy gift. And they can be discreet about that. They can be supportive without crossing the line and giving people financial advice. You get it. Point is, it's better not to do this at all than to do it with people who really aren't good at these things because you don't want to have to be like cleaning up messes. And people do feel like if they entrust someone representing the synagogue with information about their personal life, including financial information, they're counting on those people to handle that with maturity and discretion and care. So enough said. I've overmade my point. All right. Um, so what are the things that legacy giving ambassadors can help your members with? Here come the four different things. So the first two we already talked about, life insurance beneficiary, retirement account beneficiary. Can you add us in at 1%? Could you add us in at whatever percent you might feel good about? So the other two things that they need to be able to help people with are questions that they might have about how to leave a bequest in a trust or a will. The good news is that the ambassadors do not need to become financial experts or experts about trusts and wills. What they need to be able to do is help two different groups of people in two different ways. The first group are people who already have a will or a trust. The second group are people who don't have a will or a trust. I know these groupings are astonishing in their clever and creative titles. But so for people who already have a will or trust, um, what the ambassadors are going to do um, is they're actually going to do a variety of things, but all of the things fall under the umbrella of what's written there in green. They're basically trying to guide people to the place where they can then complete and submit a legacy intent form, right? So remember, with this kind of fundraising, nobody's writing a check, nobody's making a direct deposit from an account to the synagogue, right? What people are actually making is a declaration of intent. And the synagogue, ideally, will receive that in writing. And these declarations of intent do not legally bind people at all. They can change their mind and take you out of their will and never tell you. Um, and the ambassadors will know to tell them that. But what this does help is it helps congregations prepare for their financial future and know that they are probably in line to receive, um, a certain range of gifts. So I actually want to click on this hyperlink for a moment, and I'm going to show you uh, one of the resources that's part of the resource guide. So the chapter in the resource guide on legacy giving is chapter 17, and one of the hyperlinked links in that chapter takes you directly to a sample legacy intent form. And specifically, what this is providing is sample text, template text for a for an online version of this form that could live on your website, right? And I'm not going to read and scroll all the way through this. What I'm going to do instead is just kind of slowly scroll and imagine you're hearing like some music in the background. And you can kind of just see, what sorts of things are being included. You can see here that the four types of gifts are mentioned: will or trust, life insurance policy, retirement account, and there's like a space for other because you never know. Someone may have an idea about how they want to leave a legacy gift that they just need to explain. And by all means, you should hear them out. Right. And asking them, by the way, asking people if they want to be publicly acknowledged, good rule of thumb, because not everybody wants to. So it's good to make sure you do that. You're asking people if they'd be willing to share a written or video testimonial, right? And then they get to a place where they click a button to submit this form. And probably what I need to add to this is I need to add the disclaimer that says you are not required legally to follow through on this. I definitely need to add that because that should be something that's in writing on that form as well. So I will. Okay, we're back here. And I said there were two kinds of people, and we'll get more into a little bit more into wills and trusts in a second. But for people who don't have a will or a trust, your ambassadors need to be able to provide them information about three options. And again, they'll provide this information with a disclaimer every time. They'll say, "We're not giving you financial advice. Um, this is just some information that we have that we can share with you." Um, and they'll be able to tell people, number one, if you've done some Googling, you probably found that there are free do-it-yourself downloadable templates for wills and trusts. And this is a good opportunity for the ambassadors to say, we have learned that in the legal community, there's a lot of concern about free downloadable forms, and that they have sometimes turned out to be unreliable, especially if there's some kind of legal dispute that happens in probate court. So that's the first thing, is kind of a note of caution. The second thing is that there are three different online resources that really are reputable, and it really is safe for your ambassadors to say there are, in the US, there are two, and in Canada, there's one. So let's pretend this is a Canadian situation. It is actually safe for your ambassador to say, I can't give any financial advice or legal advice to you. The online platform known as Willfora here in Canada has a reputation as a resource that a lot of people trust. You'll have to decide for yourself. Now, the truth of the matter is, trust and will, free will, and Willfora are all highly regarded, and they will take people through a process of building a will or a trust that will be valid in their state or province. And the reason that they exist and that they're able to do this is that they get funding from some of the largest charitable organizations in both countries. The real big United Way, Red Cross, those folks, a bunch of them have combined some of their money and basically built these things so that people can go online and not do a fly-by-night downloadable form, but actually use an online step-by-step guide that is being vetted and updated consistently by the legal community. So that's number two. Number three, your ambassadors can also tell people if you have worries, any worries about there being some kind of conflict after your death uh, that results in your wishes not playing out the way you had wanted, then it really is worth it to hire an estate planning attorney. That is the best way, they should say, to do this and remove just about any doubt. They can't guarantee that all doubt can be removed because, as maybe many of you have seen this too, but as a former congregational rabbi, I can only, and as a human being, I can just tell you that I have seen more wills and trusts get turned into family yucky conflicts involving court than I have seen not. So nobody can, guarantee anything, but the ambassadors are in a position to be able to help people Figure out what to do. If they've already got a will or a trust, generally speaking, what they're going to be able to do is advise them to either take it to their estate planning attorney to make the required changes, or if they want to, they can explore the reputable online will makers, but they're on their own responsibility if they do that. The online will makers claim that for simple wills and trusts, you can actually upload what you have and they can make sure that any changes you make will be kosher. Again, it's basically like not so good, much better, best. That's what ambassadors will be telling people. All right. So I said you need to have a dedicated website landing page, and you do. Your landing page, I just have pointed out some of the things that should be on it. This is covered in clear language, in bullet points, in the chapter in the guide. Just to call out some of the things that I've pointed out here, you want to have a good name for your legacy giving campaign. By good, I mean something catchy, something that uh, doesn't have to be a Hebrew word in transliteration, but it can be. Dorot is a really popular word because it means generations. What I will tell you is this might seem not quite right to some of you, but if you use a Hebrew word in transliteration in small italicized font, just say what it means. Um, it- it's important. It's important that people don't feel left out. You really have no idea who it is who's thinking about leaving you a bequest in their will. It might be the Catholic auntie, of um, a couple in your synagogue who has just kfelled at every single life cycle event, and who happens to be a millionaire. Um, and like when she comes onto this website, we want to tell her that Dorot means generations. Um, you want to have a sentence on there that makes the basic ask. You want to have a picture of your ambassadors, ideally more than one, two is good. A picture, they should be looking warm and friendly, and it should be directing people how to contact them. You want to drive as many people as possible to actually email with or talk with one of your ambassadors. If you are able to do this, with your website, if you can embed a video testimonial on this landing page, that's like gold standard. If you can't quite do that, if you can have a picture of someone who's made a legacy gift with some text that in which they briefly tell why this was meaningful for them to do. That's the next best thing. You want to have a big button for frequently asked questions. That takes them to another page. You want to have buttons where it says click below to. You want to make it real easy and bright um, for people to click to learn more things. And I've included 4 things that I think would be good. Getting some information about making a gift from your life insurance or retirement account, notifying the synagogue of a bequest that you've made. Right? You're going to end up with a legacy intent form. Learning about ways to create or update your trust or will. That's the 3-pronged advice that the ambassadors are able to give while repeatedly disclaiming that they cannot and are not giving any financial advice. Or have us get in touch with you. If you have these things, you have got what you need on a landing page. Okay, I'm going to pause for a moment and I'm going to mention a program that I'm sure some of you are familiar with. It is called the Life and Legacy Program. It is from the Harold Grinspoon Foundation. And what I'm going to tell you is this is a program that some, but not all, of our synagogues may be eligible to participate in. I say that because the way this program works is it's based in a bunch of different big and medium-sized cities, and it's centered in their local Jewish federation. And each federation um, has like a maximum number of synagogues that are eligible to participate. So before you even learn anything further about what this program is, the first thing you would want to do is find out if your congregation is actually eligible. Um, I'm not going to spend more than a minute and a half talking about this. I'm going to share my candid personal take on Life and Legacy. Um, I think Life and Legacy is a really noble program, and I think that it has helped a lot of congregations. I don't think it's the right program for all of our congregations because um, it is very labor intensive. Um, Basically, um, if you're accepted into this program, they're going to they're going to have a minimum number of people that you need to have involved. They're going to offer a variety of trainings that people must attend. Um, and they're going to present you with a game plan for um, uh, trying to get as many legacy gift commitments as possible. And they've got some stringent reporting requirements. So you need to be able to keep up with what they are like expecting from you. What they're trying to do is be the friend who gets you to work out, right? They're not benefiting from this in like financially or otherwise. They're like, okay, you really want to like beef up your legacy giving program? All right, this is boot camp. We're gonna get you to do it. Um, so if that is for you, that's great. And you can do it. Um, but like I said, there's a lot of accountability that they want to them, and a lot of people hours um, dedicated to this. My worry with this for some of our congregations is that I'm worried that it will crowd out the ability of limited staff and volunteers to do other kinds of fundraising. That's the part that I'm a little worried about. Anyway, now you know. Okay, final slide. Um, so basically, what I've tried to say in a bit of a haphazard way in this presentation is that if you have 10 things you can do a year-long legacy, that should not say legacy building campaign, that should say legacy giving campaign. Side note, spell check everything. Um, if you have 10 things, you can conduct a year-long legacy giving campaign. Why do I say a year-long campaign? Why not a perpetual campaign or a 3-year campaign? Because if you haven't done this before, um, getting it set up and announcing to the congregation once you have your ambassadors and the other components in place that you're going to do this campaign for a year is a smart thing to do. And you can repeat it as many times as you want, but you'll learn a lot from doing this for a year. And remember, your campaign goal, which by the way is one of the 10 things that you'll need a campaign goal. It's unusual. It's not an amount of money. It's number of people. That's your thermometer is going to be measuring how many people have made a legacy gift over the course of this campaign. So a year is a really good period of time to see what it looks like to find your ambassadors, right? Get board approval, coordinate the timeline of how this is going to work with other fundraising activities and plans, um, promo and communications plan in the middle square. Um, you know, have your ambassadors, and now you're going to need some other people. Is it staff? Do you have a fundraising committee, or is it an ad hoc group of volunteers, but who are going to come together and map out your timeline for that year and do some work to put together promotional content that's going to be going out at Pre-planned junctures could be 6 times a year, could be 4 times a year, could be 10 times a year through a mix of communications formats, Shabbat announcements, newsletter, email, social media, right? You're hitting this a bunch of different times. You need your website landing page and the components that should be a part of it. You also want to have a printed brochure or packet that includes the same information basically that's on the website landing page, except it's mainly directing people to get the ambassadors to contact them. Um, you need a way to track how many people have made a legacy gift commitment, and you need to be able to gather some testimonials. That's 10 things. That's a lot of work. But I'm hoping that my putting it on the screen like this also gives you the sense that it's doable, um, especially if you have, you know, I don't know, 5 or 6 people, a couple of them being the ambassadors, another 3 or 4 people, and the ability to make this thing happen on your website. If you can put those things together, you could give yourself a year runway to get those things together and then launch a year-long legacy giving campaign. So that was me talking for 40 minutes. And now I'm happy to stop sharing and invite some questions or insights or comments. And if there's been anything in the chat, I'm happy to hear about that as well. Oh, I see hands. Let me call on Dan.
Yeah, Maurice, thank you very much. I have a comment and then a kind of question.
Mhm.
The comment is, as we started thinking about legacy giving, we were thinking about it in the same way you've discussed it, namely as planned giving, gifts at some undetermined time of some undetermined amount, possibly in the future, and are thinking seriously about widening the definition. That legacy giving can happen tomorrow.
Hmm.
Somebody could say, why wait? I actually, let me give X amount, some substantial number that's more than they would give in an annual fundraising, and then it goes into some kind of, let's call it a quasi endowment or something.
Right.
Um, so at least I personally find that a helpful extension of the idea, because the issue is legacy. It's not exactly identical to planned giving.
Right.
Um, and then the other, so it's just a comment
I'm glad you shared it. Go on.
um, and then the other question, and this is probably a whole other discussion, but I'll just put I don't expect a full response and put it out there. Um, because it's an unknown amount at an unknown future time, there's a scenario in which a congregation suddenly finds it has a windfall. Seriously, that at 10 years from now, they have more money than they know what to do with.
Yep, that happens.
Is there any planning that should happen around that? Should there be any thinking in setting a legacy giving goal that is about dollars, actually? We want to try and get to roughly thus and so rather than wide open because, in 5, 10 years, you might have $50,000, you might have $500,000. You just don't know.
That's exactly right. And okay, I want to respond to the second thing first, and I'll try to keep it brief with my response. Um, so one of the things, and I scrolled past it pretty fast on the legacy gift intent form, the online version of that form. There is a question, and it says that it's optional, but it invites the person to describe their legacy gift, including um, any estimated
Okay.
amount, or if it's a percentage, to if they're willing, indicate a percentage of what. Like if it's a percentage of an IRA that is currently worth $350,000, even that is information, right? Where that will help a synagogue's board make very rough estimates about what might be in the pipeline. So what you'll see in the guide is that that is part of what we're advising, is that you actually skillfully try to find out some
Great.
information about the gift if you can.
Yes.
But the other point that you made about, you know, what about the opportunity for people to make a gift right now? It doesn't it make sense that if you had like a coordinated, organically designed fundraising approach, that you might have, you know, not just legacy giving ambassadors, but like a fundraising committee, and a couple people on it are the legacy giving ambassadors, but the whole committee is kind of engaged in a variety of different kinds of asks. And they all know that if the topic turns to legacy giving, that they're willing to follow the conversation, you know, kind of where it goes. And if the conversation really does seem to present a natural moment for saying, you know, what might it be like if you were to consider you know, a gift now that could help us do A, B, and C, and then, maybe have your legacy gift be, something else. So I want to say, of course, it's a good idea if you have your fundraising committee and your fundraising planning at that level of sophistication. If you don't, then what I've actually presented with the slideshow is really just a how could you have a sort of isolated, siloed legacy giving campaign, um, and what are the minimum ingredients you need to make that happen. So you already know why I did it that way because I talked about like thinking about there not being a lot of bandwidth and resources in many of our congregations. But I want to say, as a general rule, if there's something that the guide presents and it looks very siloed and kind of like the minimalist version of it, and you know that you can do something with that by integrating it into something more complicated that you are successful at, by all means, do. This is kind of pitched so that it can be sort of, scrappy DIY, um, and what are the fundamentals that you need in order to do this. Glenn.
Hi. So I put a couple of questions in the chat, but just briefly, like for recruiting these ambassadors, if I were to be recruited, I want to know like how long is the term? Like it
Yep.
doesn't seem like you want to, you know, have a lot of turnover with these, just between the training and what have you.
Right.
And then the second question is, it's a little related to this endowment thing of like where should this money go, and I would imagine that's part of the FAQs of like we have an existing endowment, but there's all sorts of encumbrances on that of what it's really for and how we can use it and so on. With this sort of giving, should that go into a separate bucket? Maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is, well, the answer is yes. And it's addressed in the guide, and I didn't address it in this presentation, but now you've brought it up. It's actually a good idea to give people two, probably no more than three um, options for how they would like to direct their legacy gift. And if there's two, then typically it's, general fund or endowment. So there's a chapter on endowments in the guide. And one of the reasons why I didn't put this in this presentation for now is I don't know which of our congregations have functioning endowments and which ones don't. But if you do have an endowment, and by an endowment, I mean what's known as a board-directed endowment or a quasi endowment. You can forget that terminology. It's fundraising speak and it's annoying. It's a legal term actually, but basically it means this isn't like the Marty Jones family endowment for the religious school and B'nai Mitzvah program. where the board can, take the interest from it, but only for that purpose. This is your board directed general endowment for your congregation, and the board can decide how it wants to use the income that is generated by interest from the endowment every year. They can decide to use it however they want. Um, so I highly recommend that every synagogue have that kind of endowment, and it's a great idea for that to be an option. So that people can leave some to the endowment and some to regular funds. But it's not terrible if you don't have that option. And last point on this, um, it's also not a great idea to kind of set a precedent where people start getting super picky about how they are. Um, like the last thing you want is 18 different people who all decide what they're going to do is set up their own personal endowment that has rules that say how that money can or can't be used. Um, that's a pain in the butt for a board because not only does the board have to deal then with people's interpretations about, well, what does it mean that it was only for B'nai Mitzvah tutoring when we don't do B'nai Mitzvah tutoring anymore? We do it this other way. Um, like not only do they have to deal with worrying about potentially breaking the law on their interpretation, but um, they also they actually have legal responsibility to account for the money in each one of those little endowments to the congregation. So it makes work. So the rule that I learned was if somebody's determined that that's how they want to leave you legacy money, accept it. Unless it's really crazy. But if it's not really crazy, accept it. But try to create a culture where people are sort of encouraged and nudged to put it in the general endowment or put it in the general funds. Chaim.
Um, Hi, I'm Garner from Shuri Shemayim, Madison, Wisconsin. We're a 200 family community. We've been fundraising for 7 years. So, some comments I'd like to say in general about fundraising. It's the biggest burnout committee of any committee at the shul. Number two, the easiest part of fundraising, or the simplest, is you just ask. We have $1 million goal for an endowment. We just, between our last meeting and this meeting, somebody donated $50,000. We're nearing our $1 million goal. We're going to have a discussion about, well, now that we have $1 million in the endowment, what do we do with money? And what should we do with any future funds as terms of that? Because our goal up until, which will be in the next 2 months, was to raise $1 million. Well, then what happens after that? Recommendations. And will you cover that now or in a future meeting?
So you're the second person in a way to ask about what happens when money comes in. And it's a considerable amount. This is first of all, this is really encouraging that's one of the questions that's emerging. Um, I'm going to be honest with you. I have not covered this in preparing the guide. This is something I need to learn about, and this is something that I can see being a future chapter. And one of the reasons the guide is designed the way that it is what's eventually going to happen to it is it's not going to be like a 300-page paperback. It's going to be a dedicated password protected section on our website, and the landing page, among other things, is going to have rows of tiles for each of the chapters. So the idea is going to be, and then when you click on one of those tiles, you're not going to see a PDF like what I've been sending you all as drafts of some of these chapters. What you're going to see is something that's digitally formatted to be user-friendly and interactive, and that also has easy links to worksheets and so on. So the reason that it's designed with each of these kind of modular and semi-autonomous topics is because we totally anticipate that there'll be some additional chapters. Um, and tonight I heard, what happens? It doesn't it make sense to have like some general advice about game planning for an unexpected windfall slash we set an ambitious goal and then we did it. And now we've got some decisions to make. So I am being transparent with you that I probably have some ideas right off the top of my head I could offer, but I don't think they'd be better than the ideas that folks here would generate. And furthermore, I want to say if you have thoughts about this or are aware of some really great practices around this, I hope you'll let me know, because this is now an area I want to try and gather good info about. You're also reminding me of another question I didn't respond to, which is how long should you be asking ambassadors to do this? 3 years, and then see if they're willing. If they're willing to do three, they'll probably be willing to do a fourth. But 3 years is a good chunk of time. If you're going to do it as an experimental 1 year campaign, you should still ask them if they'll sign on to do this for 3 years and if they're willing to help train their replacement. Okay, Scott, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you for entertaining this conversation. I will say that as a prologue to this, I'm Scott Saffron. I'm with Beit Havarim in Atlanta. Two of my colleagues from Beit Havarim are on the call, and one is a fundraising expert and one is a finance expert. I am neither. I'm a marketing person, and I'm not a fundraiser. So my question is a little bit different, which is about the word legacy. Because I think about the retirement stuff the same way. And that's like the language of legacy versus just fundraising to keep our operating going and to pay for programming and everything. But when I talk legacy, I'm thinking about the longer term, like funds that can help support other members' dues and things that can help support the building and like just other kind of things. But I don't make a distinction between something that might occur when you die versus something that maybe could be, accessed through a donor advised fund or something that you might be able to give in retirement, which is a lot more tangible for the congregation and for a lot of our, people who are eligible to donate. So I'm just curious about how specific we have to be about what legacy can cover or not.
No, that's a good question. I mean, legacy seems to be the favored term, at least among the experts and teachers that I've watched and read, across the faith community. Um, and it seems to be a term that really does stick to planned giving, even though um, in soliciting people to make other kinds of gifts, like giving from retirement accounts, um, or simply making a big gift. Um, uh, Sometimes the pitch, the marketing language around that will talk about how this is going to help build a legacy, or how this is a way you can leave a legacy. And I think that the terminology just kind of floats like that. But when the word legacy shows up in the title of a type of giving, it tends to stick to um, you know uh, an estate plan of some sort.
I know it's so much more of an emotional word than retirement. So I don't know.
I agree, and I also think that I'm curious to hear if there's people here who do have expertise in the field. If you have a thought about it, I don't think a synagogue is obligated. I think a synagogue should use the language that works and that communicates things positively. And if a synagogue has a culture that's also kind of playful, um, that's worth factoring in as well. So, what you all do with language, hopefully can be part of the fun. Rebecca.
I had a question. I'm from Bedlam Shalom in New York.
Yeah,
We recently had a legacy fund campaign when our rabbi and cantor retired, and I'm curious about um, how using the term so closely to this big campaign we ran, it could affect using the word legacy now.
good one. Right, because your campaign was about honoring the rabbi's legacy.
Right.
See? Okay. Uh, I think that you're right. I think that probably a little space between those things makes sense. Although, um, if you decided to do something like what I proposed, right? To say um, we're gonna do a campaign and forget whether or not it runs a year. Maybe it runs 3 years and it's kind of gentler. It's not as you know, fast paced or urgent as other campaigns might feel. Maybe this is something that every 8 to 10 weeks over the course of 3 years, there is going to be an announcement, a pitch, something coming across through communications. And you've got this goal of, you know, adding 50 more legacy gifts or intent, declarations of intent, or in the case of people who have made a change to their beneficiaries on a life insurance policy or retirement account, um, you know, maybe you have a different way of counting those versus people who've actually said you're in my will. Um, but if you have a campaign, whether it uses the word legacy or not, that is clear and appealing, and it becomes familiar, um, and is kind of weaving its way through the communal life of your congregation as it flows over the next 2 to 3 years, like you have a good chance to dramatically increase the number of people who will make some kind of legacy commitment. And, the fruit of all of that is going to be harvested by a lot of other people down the road. I mean, it could be by us as well, but the point is to be thinking about this, all of us collectively, to be thinking about this as this is for folks coming down the pike. I'm wondering if I can ask Sherry if there's anything I'm missing um, in uh, in the chat.
Well, there's a whole conversation happening in the chat.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Well, I hope it as long as there isn't a why won't he respond to this question in the chat kind of question.
I
Maurice,
guess I would invite anybody who has written anything in the chat who wants it in the room to go ahead and unmute and speak.
well, Maurice, I was just going to throw in a quick comment. It strikes me as you're talking during this section that similar to how you began this course talking about the importance of thinking about your congregation and what it is and understanding it and how to present it and so on and so forth as a place to start. I think similarly, a lot of thought going into why are we having a legacy campaign? What is it for? And really thinking that through beyond just, oh, it'll be a good thing to have will probably
Totally.
be helpful in a lot of different ways.
Absolutely. And here I really want to point back to the storytelling unit. And I see your hand, Cheryl. I'll get to you in just a moment. It's really, really important, and in that there's a narrative, that there's a story that goes with this kind of campaign. And um, in some ways, a story that's talking about past, present, and future, it's hard to have that story include a lot of very vivid details because it's trying to cover a lot of ground in time, and it's also trying to not be too long of a story. Um, Nevertheless, um, including some vivid and specific moments or examples in the past and present is crucial. And they should be things that really are emblematic of important themes in the story of your congregation. Um, and but when you get to the future part, it's especially important that you describe to people what the congregation can and will do in some specific terms that they can picture. And it can be what the congregation can and will do, providing that we have the money to do it. It's okay to say that. And you might be like, well, how can we do that? We can't be sure that 30 years from now, people in charge of this congregation are going to want to do X, Y, and Z. So that's the challenge is you need to think about what is core to your mission and what you're already talking about what you would like to be able to do or do bigger or more of. And then you want to find a way to say, this is what we aspire to do that we aspire that for the next generation to be able to have um, kids come to school in classrooms where you can't hear what's going on in the next classroom because the walls are too thin. Um, where we are able to ensure that every student who comes to our religious school is guaranteed that they're able to go to a Jewish summer camp for at least one summer, regardless of their ability to pay. So you can say these are things we aspire to be able to do if we're able to, and you have not cosmically committed people 30 years hence to do exactly that, but you are in good faith to the best of your ability, giving some vivid images of what it is you want to be able to do. And that's allowed. And in fact, it's really necessary. You need to say something more specific and vivid than to perpetuate the good work, the holy work of our synagogue, to continue Torah and and community and and social justice far into the future. Okay, but what does that look like? What am I trying? And you can also in a story like this, you can also include a place for someone who's thinking about making a legacy gift to say what it is that they want to see happen. I mean, that's part of why you need to have ambassadors. The ambassadors are the people who are going to have a real conversation, and they're going to find out more about what's important to the people they're talking to. And if when they hear recurring themes, they're going to share that information with the rabbi and the board and the executive director. Okay, Cheryl. Do we have you, Cheryl? Did you want to jump in? Okay. We've got about 13 minutes left. So actually, I want to kind of crack open the other slideshow and spend like 10 of those 13 minutes in it. And then I'm going to do the same thing I did with the multipurpose thing. I'm going to just like actually um, narrate it as a video and upload it for you so that you can access it. Um, and I welcome your candid feedback about that approach to dealing with my not super accurate planning for what could fit in to 90 minutes. So I will welcome that feedback as well as suggestions when that time comes. But for now, I want to share my screen again. And I'm going to go to this tab. And I'm going to start presenting this. And I'm just going to get into it, but I'm going to keep an eye on the clock. So, all right. Um, Giving from retirement accounts. This is, if I had to tell you, if I had to, sorry, if I had to tell you what I thought was the single thing that more than anything else that you could do, I would urge you to do this, to put in place a plan, to have a campaign that runs for a year or longer that is specifically seeking to ask people to make specific types of donations from their retirement accounts. Um, and I want to talk about what this looks like. And this guide, this chapter of the guide is divided up over and over again to help people, whether they're in the US or in Canada. I think all the congregations that are present today are in the US, so I'm just going to limit what I say in the next few minutes to how this works in the United States. But basically, the deal is that, right, if you have an IRA or a different kind of retirement account, and you reach a certain age, in the United States, it's 70 and a half, um, um, then you are allowed to make what's known as a qualified charitable distribution, a QCD. You're allowed to make a QCD, a gift to a nonprofit organization, and synagogues are included, even if they don't have 501c3 status. Um, and if you make that gift in a certain way, it gives you some big tax benefits, and of course, it helps the synagogue. So, part of what I do in this chapter is make sure people understand how this works. And I'm going to just use the example of a congregant who has an IRA. Um, I realize there are other kinds of retirement accounts, and that's okay, but let's just talk about IRAs for the moment. So basically, the way that this works in the United States is you can only get these lovely tax benefits by making a charitable gift directly from your IRA if that gift never touches your hands, so to speak. In other words, the account manager for your IRA, wherever they are, whether it's Merrill Lynch or Fidelity or whoever it might be, you're going to tell them, I want to make a charitable contribution to my synagogue and I want to get all the tax benefits. And they're going to say, great, what you want to do is make a QCD, and I can help you do that. And the way that this is going to play out is that a check or a wire transfer is going to go directly from the IRA account to the synagogue. It's never going to come to you. And by doing it that way, you get uh, actually a variety of different kinds of potential income tax savings that can be quite significant. We're going to skip how this happens in Canada. We're going to skip talking about why fall and winter are sometimes really good seasons to try and do this. And instead, we're going to talk about 3 practical things that your synagogue needs to have if it wants to do a campaign that is aimed at encouraging members who have retirement accounts to make these kinds of gifts to the synagogue. So guess what? You need a point person or 2. These are kind of like the ambassadors for the legacy giving. Could they be the same people? I suppose so. If it's a smaller congregation and you really trust that these people can do these 2 things and they want to and are willing to, I suppose they could. But you need, if you want to do a campaign that's aimed at these kinds of gifts, to have a point person or persons. You need a website landing page specifically for giving from retirement accounts. Please trust me on that. You need that if you want to do this and actually have it like manifest the very significant amounts of money that it can result in your congregation starting to receive annually. And you need a printed packet or a brochure that basically conveys the same information that's on the landing page. So by laying out these three things like this, part of what I'm trying to do is convince you that this is like very much within reach. Um, and it is. And I shouldn't oversimplify it either. There's a decent amount of work that you need to do. Remember these folks who I picked for kindness and excellent social skills? Those are the people that you want to do this role of point person. Um, this slide we don't need to dwell on. It just lists the specific information that your congregation needs to be able to provide so that the person can give it to their account manager so that they can make this type of charitable donation and get you all the tax credits. You might notice a little bit of similarity to the presentation you just saw. Um, you want a website landing page for it. I don't recommend calling it the Giving from Retirement Accounts page. You want to call it something like the High Society, and I didn't follow my own rule. Even for the word high, it's a good idea to have something that with, kind of italics and sort of cheerfully says, high means life, exclamation point. Right? But similar kinds of stuff, you want to make this a place that people can get to and that you can drive them to with your printed material by having a QR code on the printed material or by having the website address that they can go straight to, but also having the name and phone number and email of the contact person for people who prefer to have someone get in touch with them. Right. And I offered an example of what this might look like in printed material. By the way, for folks who asked earlier, what if there should be more than one way people can donate their money? I provided an example of that here. You could have your website landing page and your printed material tell people that they have three different options for how they can direct their charitable gift from their retirement account. It can go to the general fund, it can go to an endowment fund, it can go to a scholar in residence fund. I would not make more than three options, and the little photo images are so that there would be visuals for each one of those, but you get the idea. I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen now. And I want to say another word about this type of giving, since I've now, made this bold statement that if there was only one thing, I would suggest that you do this. Basically, the way I would put it is this, and I know there are folks here who maybe could say this in their own words as well. In the US, at age 73, I believe, you are required, if you have a retirement account, you are required to take an annual minimum distribution from that account. Okay. And when you do that, it counts as income, as earned income. So it affects your annual reportable income and your income tax. There are people for whom that money is how they make it month to month. Those are not the people that are going to be making these gifts. And there's nothing about this that is about pressuring people in that situation to make this gift. I see you, Jackie, and I'm going to tie this off and then call on you. But the bottom line is that there is a chunk, and I can't tell you what percentage it is in your synagogue, but no matter where you are, the chunk is chunky. Like it may be a majority of people for whom at least some of that required minimum distribution, that annual distribution, is discretionary income. And people do a lot of beautiful things with that income. A lot of them give it to other charities. A lot of them will give it to family members who are in a tight spot, or they help pay for college tuition. And the amounts really differ, right? There are people for whom this annual distribution might be $7,000 or $8,000. But there are people for whom it is $80,000 or $90,000. And if they make a QCD type of gift, and let's say they give half of it to your synagogue, um, they are benefiting two different ways. Tax wise, I'm not going to unpack that, but there are there are reasons that may make them very happy in that regard. But here's the deal: if somebody makes a gift and does that once, there's a really good chance some of them are going to do it every single year. And these tend to be gifts that are at least four figures. So the single most important initiative that you could possibly undertake is to put together a plan and launch this kind of thing. Because this window that we're now in of baby boomers and then very soon Gen Xers, um, rolling through over the next 10 to 20 years, and in huge numbers, having to take these required minimum distributions. If your synagogue does not become a part of who those people are giving that money to, other nonprofits will be. And I want them all to flourish, but I don't want our synagogues to miss out. And this is potentially transformative amounts of money. The legacy giving, as somebody pointed out, it's all unknown. The other thing is, with the world kind of meshuggah and economy kind of meshuggah, like major global events that take a nation's economy and do this to it, make people change what's in their estate plans. This is money people would actually give to you one year and then possibly the next and the next. Jackie, it's 9:30, but I still want you to have the last word. But first you got to unmute. Oops, it
No,
didn't
you're
work.
still on mute, Jack.
Okay, great.
Yes, there it
Yes,
is.
I have huge energy for this. I am in this group of people. There's one thing that you didn't say that I keep coming up against, and that is so many people don't even know about the fact that it exists. There's a kind of an educational piece in
Yes,
general for people who are moving into this period of life.
yes, I agree.
And I think, and there are things that you can do that make it work correctly and incorrectly. So there's precision required.
That's right.
And it's like the favorite topic of most finance pages these days because of the boomers graduating, so to speak.
Totally. And I'm glad you said that. And I know we're 1 minute over. I promise we'll close by 3 minutes after. Um, uh, so I'm going to record the presentation, and I really hope everyone will watch it. And we'll start next time by making time for talking about it. Okay. And the guide really offers some really clear instructions for the point people. And it offers up ideas that a lot of churches and synagogues do, which is they'll put on a program that is partly about sound retirement financial planning, but that also explains how this works. And at the end of the day, what we end up advising, because you don't want to have a detail get done wrong and then lose the tax benefits, um, is that this involves a phone call. Um, you know, it, you're going to want to actually talk to an account manager,
Mhm.
and they're going to say, "I know exactly how to do that, and I'm going to walk you through the steps to do it right." And they do know exactly how to do it, and they will walk anybody through it, and it doesn't take very long. Um, but that's a really important point, and there is an opportunity for doing some programming as well around it. So it's 9:33. I'm going to say Lila Tove, good evening, good night to everyone. And we're back in a week, and look for a message that includes a link to a video tomorrow. And thanks a lot.
Thank you, Maurice.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.